I always forget one thing, right? Like every time I think I forget like one little moment. Uh, okay, so here's my kind of launch question. I was thinking about the fact that today we're going to talk about object diagrams and state diagrams, and then I'm going to have. I never did post that other assignment, as you may note, but and I'm also kind of launch. Here we go. Let me drop that link into the chat real quick. Um, yeah, there we go. Okay. Um, what I kind of realized was we're making really good time, kind of just cooking through the state diagrams, state diagrams, you know what I mean, the UML diagrams. We're not. I don't feel like we're rushing it or being super hasty or like got to get through the material kind of thing. But I feel like we're, I'm looking up and we've got 3 weeks left, and I, there's not 3 weeks of the UML stuff and that discussion about design. So I wanted to just pick your brains. Maybe you've got an idea right now, or maybe you can come up with one. But what would be, given everything we've done so far, right? We've been going through design headfirst, design patterns, right? You've been doing that on kind of a weekly thing. Most of the lectures we're talking about design. We're talking about ways to think about design, right? And then using the UML diagrams as kind of a way. And to guide our thinking and discussion about design. And I think we've got a little room. Now oh, by the way, I did data gathering. I did data gathering about the exam. I was going to say one of these days we could just meet at Nico's. Oh, yes. Why not, right? I mean, we can just, it's a good time because place isn't crowded. We can throw some tables together kind of thing or do something without totally overloading, their place. So I did realize that. That's one of the options for one of those days we could have like, I don't know what we do that day other than eat pizza and just visit. But um, and it'd be good. I got my second COVID shot tomorrow, so 2 weeks from right now is my max immunity day. So, you know, like 2 weeks from Monday, what is that? 22nd. Uh, like that's like the 26th. That's the last week of class. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Or it could be Wednesday, the last day of class. But anyway, I think that last week of the semester we should have one of the class periods at Nico's. Are we good with that idea? I'm buying, of course, um, because are you hearing me? Everyone's quiet. Are we okay? Uh,
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds amazing.
okay, all right. Well, because it sounded amazing to me. It was like crickets, So I didn't know. But I was thinking, okay, I graded the exam, as you will have noticed. Now, here's the interesting thing. I don't remember what was do you remember what my over under was? I know I said I was going to just do it anyway and it didn't matter. But do you remember what my over under was on numbers of like how many had to take the thing seriously and give me words and
I,
say
I think it was
things.
all. I think it was all but two.
Okay. That's
I
exactly what.
remember the final thing that I heard from you saying was just impress me.
Well, I was impressed, I got to say. Okay, but so here's the deal. There are 13 students in the class. It's a very small section, or we would not be talking about Nico's. Um, and when the dust settled, of the 13, there were two that, honestly, you know who you are, must have been sound asleep when I was talking about this whole thing, and still did terse little short little whatever, traditional. We'll call that the traditional approach. There were two that did the traditional approach. Now, of the remaining 11, there were two who did a bit of a hybrid. It was more words than the traditional approach. You know what I mean? But it wasn't the traditional. It was more impressive than not. There were two like that. and there were 9 that jacked it out of the park. Jacked it. 9 of the 13 straight jack over the left field wall. Raining threes, every single question. So if you cheat the 2 hybrids, and append them, we actually did kind of like the 2, no more than 2, the 11 or better, kind of number. You actually did it. So impressive. I was impressed. And for those that jacked it over the wall, mostly you got near 100%. I mean, it was some fine work. So pizza as a motivator, Rick. Yeah, but so there we go. Serve it up, baby. Serve it up, Nico. We're coming. So I think we should do either Monday or Wednesday. I don't know. I just feel like it's been a year from hell. You know what I mean? Since we went COVID mode at spring break last year, it just feels like a weird year from hell. And I know that's true for everybody, not just me. So I'm feeling like, let's get this thing down the stretch and get us the heck out of here. Let's get out of here and have a little fun and end on a good note. And I don't know. So, but I was reminded by the fact that I think that the object and state diagram discussion is going to go pretty fast. But um, let me show you actually real quick, and then I want to go back to what I was first starting to talk about. Okay, here's the slides. Okay, now I do mean slides because that's 1, that's 2, that's it. That's it. 1 slide on object diagrams. Okay, so we're gonna touch that, hit it, and then we're gonna bop to state diagrams, which I think are actually pretty important. And there's an assignment I want you to do with state diagrams. And then I got to go into kind of cleanup mode. Also, I've had this other thing that I think I mentioned that's due like tonight that I'm probably going all-nighter on. Yeah, you're not the only ones that do all-nighters. So I've got that tonight. And then as soon as that's done, I'm trying to wrap up with the rest of the backup grading and clean it up going down the stretch. That's what I'm trying to do. We'll find out how well I do at that. But no, so the burning question I've got is, are there things that, given everything you now know about design, where we talked about Alexander, we talked about shiny objects, we talked about, the whole shiny object, squeaking door, the orders of ignorance. We beat the crap out of use cases and the notion of getting outside of ourselves and into sort of the empathetic aspect of design, right? Where we're moving for an audience that has to come behind us, whatever that is, whether that's code or interface or whatever, or payment signs or. But just given everything we've talked about, are there topics that you would dig? Like if I finished up all the UML stuff in the next, what's today? Wednesday. If we finished up all the UML next week, and we had a spare day, though, in the week after that, are there any topics that you would really dig trying to jump on?
So we've done a lot of the homework with the software patterns, and a lot of those seem to be kind of Java specific, but I think it would be cool. So I don't want to assume here and remember, but did you have a big stint in industry? I don't remember if you said that or not.
Yeah.
Most professors have. I think it would be cool if we could just talk about some of the most prevalent and maybe, or even some of the coolest uses of those patterns that you've sort of encountered in your career, and just to try, because we've talked about a lot of heady, awesome stuff, but I think it'd be really cool to try and get some practical things that we can start to apply to our own coding like right now.
Now, the interesting thing about that, Sam, I think it's a great idea. The challenge that I have is that I encountered design patterns, both Goff and Alexander, in my PhD program. I was in my mid 30s when those things sort of showed up, right? The bulk of my sort of core design experience in an industrial setting where I'm writing code, at HP and Novell, basically. And then I did some consulting for Intel, where I was building software, for Intel in where are they, Beaverton, Portland area, anyway. And it all, so my core, like Chuck is a coder, Chuck is a professional coder, all predates the arrival of patterns. And then I'm an executive and an executive and a professor with some alternation, right? And now, so I don't honestly feel like I don't have any war stories about, we're doing this, I don't know, we're doing this object oriented thing, and suddenly the singleton pattern came flying in, and saved the day or whatever. And I'm not trying to like trivialize it by saying that. I'm just saying that I have a lot of war stories about all that world, and even going up to around 2000, when I was an executive in the company in Oregon, all of our stuff was still pretty low level, so it was pretty much all like C and assembly. And then I'm doing wireless, the mobile computing lab at BYU and wireless data communications. Guess what all that is? You know what I'm saying? So anyway, but what might be interesting is if I were to pound my network a little bit, and get somebody who does have, right, those contemporary war stories. I mean, I'm literally in a position where I was too old when Goff showed up to be a coder, to be like a professional coder, and that's my world. All the other coding is like incidental, or I'm in my lab, or I'm, you know what I mean, doing this or that, but not the same kind of depth. But I like the notion of let me go scrounge somebody who really has that kind of war story action, you know, in hand. Let me peek at that, okay, and see. Um,
Yeah, it
so
sounds great. I
I
think that'd be awesome.
I think it's a great idea, a great suggestion, and I would love to like just not have to prep anything, just show up and listen. But I'll poke around on that. Are there any other ideas? And you're right though, Sam. I mean, I've done like all the crap, had my, gotten down to the crappy work, down to the grunge, in my career. But I always really, if it hasn't occurred to you by now, I'm always a lot more lit up about the sort of the philosophical, the philosophical concepts. And that's just, there's nothing right or wrong about that. It's just my bias. It's just the way my brain's wired that I dig that stuff. And then I know that in this class in the past, I've had students that are good students, and I've had great relationship with them, like from another class or even, and they would just be like, Chuck, man, you keep talking about all this stuff, and could you just give me some code to bloody write? I really appreciate it. And and I know that some of you are probably like that, you know what I mean, where you like really just prefer if you could have some code to write. And and that's cool, but I'm also, you know what I mean, I also recognize that this is an unusual, it's it's a little across the board. I think there's more lean toward the hands-on grunge in our curriculum than on the higher level philosophical. So I'm okay being a little bit of a counterbalance. Oh, and let me say one other thing, Sam. I think you said it. I think in our department there's a fair, especially among the instructors. Um, what are the official titles for these guys? Lecturers, the Wagstaffs of the world. Those guys have like tons of hands-on and kicked over from a beefy career in industry doing that kind of design and you know and code. uh most professors in, I mean by this, I mean PhDs, professors at most universities have little to jack actual industry experience. So I think that we are unusual here at UVU in that respect, of having a lot more industry experience. But mine, from a hands-on perspective, definitely aged. Anyway, are there other topics that jump out that you would really dig at, maybe, if we went after for just a day, just to spend a day on?
I hate to monopolize, but nobody else is going
No one's
for it.
talking, so it's,
But
the mic is
but I
yours.
think yeah, but I think one thing that's super important and that a lot of us will probably have to end up doing in some capacity, especially if we end up working at a startup or something, is there has been, at least in my experience, and maybe I've missed a class or something, but almost no UI or UX
In this
classes
class?
or stuff
Oh, classes in general, or do you mean here?
in general. Yeah, no, I'm saying in general in the degree. But realistically, if you ever do client like stuff, especially at a smaller company, you're probably going to have to look at it, and odds are you're probably going to be bad at it. And so I think like having a sort of crash course or just talking about some of the ideas behind that seems,
Yeah,
sort of opportune. And that's just another thought I had.
yeah. I know
I
that there
agree with that
are.
completely.
Do you, Devin? There are classes. What are the classes that we have? Don't we have classes on UI? I still just don't know the curriculum well enough.
I think there's like a human factors in software. I'm not sure if that covers that or not. That title just sounds like it
It
might be
seems like it
pertinent.
would, right? That sounds like it to me. Let me see. Anybody know? Like, if there's other? I'm looking it up real quick because I just literally just don't have that at the top of my brain. Um, where are we? Okay, what is that? Yeah, I'm just kind of looking here real quick. I'm looking at well, I'm actually here. Let me throw it up on the big screen over here. Uh, what do we got? Working my way down on the left. Networks, organization, internship, OS. Come on, baby. Human factors. Analysis design from the perspective of human-computer interaction, design of interface, data via graphics, color, text, sound. Um, that's honestly, that's a class I really would love to teach. So that's 3410. Has anybody had that here? And is it required? Is that a required class for you?
I know it's an elective. I haven't had it.
Okay. I'm looking over on the right then. Wow, that might be the only one on interface design. I guess I get that at some level, right? The notion that wouldn't strictly be required. Not everybody's going to do interface stuff. But yeah, we're out. Yeah. So in terms of undergrad curriculum, that's it. 3410. Huh. Wonder who. Anyway, I think maybe Ken teaches that maybe. Okay. Well, that's interesting. That is interesting. We could potentially do Crasho Corso about the interface stuff. and you know, a lot of what I've done here has been like really, really applicable, right, to industry stuff, interface stuff. Um,
Yeah, yeah, but I think just having just like, okay, this is concrete. I can, when I'm at my first week on the job and they want me to do an interface, I can think back to just having some
yeah,
idea of where to go.
yeah, man. I'm just flashing back because I don't know. I mean, I've done, I've both done interface stuff, including on successful products. And I think in my PhD program, I had a graduate, UI interface design class. But let me see what I can pull up. I think it would be maybe not a bad bookend. I've actually worried a little bit, to be very honest, because I've focused so much on things like use case design, which I don't. Let me put it this way. I honestly, in my heart of hearts, don't feel like I said too much about that. I don't think that's actually really possible, because I just think it's so important. But I have wondered about, ratio and proportion in terms of the class, right? Because it's still very much a work in progress for me, right? Every class I ever teach, I'm always evolving it, just trying to figure out if there's a better way. There always is, because there's always something you're doing that sucks. Always, right? I don't care who you are. And you can always kind of make that better. Uh, and I feared a little bit stealing some of the thunder from UI, like by being a little too focused on the higher level instead of giving you guys a lot more of the low level design grunge, kind of exposure. That's an open question for me with respect to this class. So that's cool. Okay, any other ideas? Sam? No, everybody else? Do you have any ideas? Anything else you'd like me to maybe hit? Uh, and it's okay if you don't. Um, Braden, sorry, man, about the video feed. Honestly, the other really difficult thing, Sam, for me is that I feel like I feel like I'm a good designer, a good interface designer, but I feel like my approach to doing it is more about a perpetual shiny object, squeaking door thing. You have some basic idea, you throw it out. You see what everybody else in the world has ever done about that one thing. You know what I mean? And then when the moment is live, you then are looking for what lights you up, where's the dopamine and where's not, you know? And it's a weird sort of refinement process that I know how I do it. And I don't know exactly how to say, here's how one does that, you know? And I've been noodling over that because that's the essence of this book that I'm working on, right? That I think I told you about my book, right? That was called, the title of the book is The Minimum Viable Product is Dopamine. Um,
I think you did briefly mention it
I,
at the beginning of
somewhere near the
class. It's
beginning, yeah.
been a
But
minute.
the truth is that it's a dilemma because I know I know that I can do it once the moment's in front of me. It's a little bit like if you play like a tune on the guitar, and if somebody says what are the chords, and you're like, I'm not sure, and there's like a muscle memory thing that kicks in when you're actually you know what I mean. You put the guitar in your hand and you just start playing it, and you have to. If you think about it, you can't play it. There's a little of that going on, little bit of that going on. Um, the Rick just said maybe some lifelong knowledge you'd like to pass on. What would you tell younger you? Oh, what would I tell young Chuck? What I send back? What's future Chuck gonna fax back to young Chuck? Oh man, yeah, no, that'd be good. I think there's some. Let me put it this way: I would be more than happy. Again, just kind of in the spirit of we got this small group. We've had this cool experience. I'd be more than happy um, to like, answer any and all of those kinds of life questions. In fact, in my perfect world, we could we'd have our own private conference room at Nico's, and then I could just talk there, and we could have that life conversation. But it's a little bit of an imposition if anybody else is in the restaurant. You know what I mean? Which can't be predicted. So those are good ideas. If you come up with anything else, just drop it in the comments. Okay. Okay, my friends. What else? Should we talk about object diagrams? You're like, no, that's not nearly as much fun as these other things we're talking about. But I don't want to do it. I want to say one other thing, and this is kind of directed at everybody, but maybe I'm picking on Sam just a little bit because you were the one with the idea. But I've also wondered and thought about, like how much lecturing do I actually want to do about, the design patterns when the book is the way the book is, simply saying what the book already says feels a little funny. And the book's pretty dang good if you just give it a little room and let it breathe and do the thing, you know. Um, and like I said, I don't have nearly as many cool object-oriented design and implementation stories as I do, imperative C and assembly, kinds of war stories.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the point of I guess what I was hoping for and what I was sort of going for is it not necessarily that. See, maybe it is like I was thinking more high level again, but just the idea that the what format you're doing stuff in is less important than the process. And I think what I thought it'd be cool to learn about is what that process looks like, because we get taught a lot of syntax and a lot of the basic ideas. But and I've been fortunate enough to have some people talk about their process and
You,
how you become a good developer.
you
But
mean the process of development and design?
yeah,
Okay.
and so and kind of the considerations uh,
Yeah.
you have now that you understand the patterns and what you're looking for in applying them. I don't
Yep.
know. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it does. I think it does. And what's interesting is it also depends, in my mind, because see, the Goff patterns to me are just they're hardly a sacred canon. You know what I mean? Of the patterns, the ones that you design with that just didn't
Um,
that aren't in the Goff book. You know what I'm saying? So to me, the
yeah,
Goff book has always been less important than the going through them is itself a sort of an exercise in extrapolating out the principles, right, that are coming out of it. In the same way that reading the entire Christopher Alexander book called A Pattern Language, which has 254 patterns from a building architect, right? They're like building patterns from lower level idiomatic type patterns to higher level, larger, not just building architecture, but cities, towns. Um, Even though I'm never going to build a town, just reading through that and letting that process kind of enlighten me, right? It does a certain thing. And then the actual patterns I care about from the book, very few. Then there's a bunch of patterns that are going to show up in my life that I'll actually figure out myself because the process, you know, whenever I find myself in a design moment, whether it's software, whether it's curriculum, whether it's my bedroom, whatever, where there's a contention of competing forces, you know, um, whenever I feel like there are competing forces, and no matter what I do, like that suffers this way, this suffers that way, right? That's sort of my little trigger, my little alert in my head that says there is a pattern here waiting to emerge, and therefore it has nothing to do with anything that I've ever actually seen before. I'm not going to go look it up. So in other words, what I'm curious about, and I think I have a guess about what I think the answer is going to be, but I want to ping a couple of my friends who are out there, like right now being architects, and I will bet you pizza at Nico's, the same meal, not a new one. Um, I bet you breadsticks and fountain drinks that they are going to say kind of what I'm saying here. That yeah, I've seen them, except at the architectural level, where model view controller, important. Client server, important. Pipes and filters, important. Protocol stacks, important. These are architectural patterns that if somebody says what that is, you really do know what that thing is. And as for the design patterns in Goff itself, I'm going to guess that most experienced designers working right now today are not going to say, oh yeah, these 24, they're everything, you know. And I'm not saying that you're saying that. I'm making my own guess about what they're going to say, where they're more contemporary than I am in terms of, what's happening right now in the world of design. But I will find out. Braden said, if we could go over designing our own patterns based on analogous real life elements, I'd like that. Yeah, if you want to expound a little bit more, Braden, on what, because we did a little bit of that at the very beginning where I said, find a thing you do, right? But then it's not software. Just tell me about a pattern that you've figured out in your life that you've given a name to, right? And it's usually going to be something that's balancing some competing forces. That's why it feels so cool and revolutionary, you know. So, yeah. Well, I think there's enough in there. I think there's enough in all of that. And I'll either try to find a guest speaker um, and or query some of my own buddies that are out there doing these kinds of things. I think that might be a good idea. Okay, let me hit some of these slides. Let's do a little slide-o-rama, shall we? Because I don't know, it feels academic somehow. But no, these are just a few more things I want you to just pass through your crania before we're done here. Ready? Object diagrams. Ready? Go. Objects, go. Not that crazy, okay? Not that fancy. This is your class diagram over here on the left. There's your object diagram over there on the right. The class diagram is like DNA, right? It just tells you how the classes are laid out. Right? The object diagram just says, okay, now the system starts to run. And suddenly an organization is created in Chicago with Don, who's in Champaign. That's a town in Illinois, as well as a beverage, but I think it's spelled differently when it's the bubbly alcoholic beverage. And John, who's also a person, also in Champaign, who are part of the Chicago parent organization, right? And another one, Saba, I don't know where that is. I don't know. It must be the name of a town? I don't know. It's not one I'm familiar with. And then, so you've got basically this hierarchy where, that's it. That's it. You're just saying as the system runs, what does it look like? Like, for example, if I'm going to put a bunch of information in a linked list and I just pause the system, I should be able to see the linked list. Here's a node, there's its value, there's the stuff, link to the next one, like a snapshot of the running system. Got it? Any questions on that one? And but here is my question to you. So what? What does that make you think about from a design perspective? That spark any thoughts? It ought to. I mean, in the in the gospel according to Chuck, um, everything ought to spark some ideas because you got to be thinking all the time about pushing the envelope on not just taking what somebody's telling you, but be innovating and creating and analyzing things yourself to make sense of them, put them into your world. What do you think? What are some things that this makes you think about, encourages you to think about, induces you to think about? Oh dear. Oh dear. What do you think?
Well, it, the relate so it's kind of I don't know, this is just in my brain, but it kind of makes me think of the fact that you almost like you need a class diagram for the actual code, but with this you kind of have very similar information or almost the same information just presented in a different format because
So is that true, Sam? That it's the
is
same information, but in a different format?
well, I don't know if that's the same information. I'm just saying that you can get the class diagram from stuff like this, and ultimately the point of a class diagram is to get the object. I don't know. Maybe that's just a truism and not is not saying anything
Well,
worthwhile. But
it's not worthwhile. Okay? The punchline really, um, sorry, I have like this kind of like dry throat and I just popped something in. I thought I'd catch the moment while Sam was talking. The class diagram is static. It's like DNA, right? For a human. The DNA, my DNA, if you took a DNA sample of me, now I'm off my pay grade now, okay? But like I have this scar on my thumb. I have vague recollection of acquiring it as a small child, but it's a good one, okay? It's like, it goes from like here to here. It's big. It's really something happened. There were no stitches on that either. That's not in my DNA. Yeah, that my DNA is not going to show, that I have a scar there. It's not going to show my body weight. You know what I mean? It's not going to show, right? In other words, this my scar on my thumb, my current body weight, um, you know, what what's the little lozenge thing I'm sucking on? The DNA is like a blueprint of how to make the object. Then I have to instantiate the object. The object comes alive, runs the constructors, right? And now it exists. And what you see here actually, notice that we have this thing called uh, party. I don't know what that is. If that's political party, dance party, I don't know what kind of party. Children and parent. Oh, the children and parent have to do with it can have children organizations apparently, and organizations relate to people, have associated people, and the party's made up of these things, right? Well, what we see here is this organization has a person and a person and another person. Um, Sorry, that organization is made up of two people. This organization has no people. That organization is made up of two organizations. In other words, this doesn't show you three organizations and two persons running in real time. Okay. So, for example, if you ran this thing like crazy, your snapshot might be, 5,000 nodes all alive in some elaborate structure, right? But none of them is a class diagram. But the class diagram helps you understand what each one can be in real life, right? I don't know if that makes sense. And I'm dying on the DNA. Okay, wait, I have a DNA thing to share with you. It's a meme, but it
There.
involves DNA. What's that?
I was saying maybe the epigenetics are more like the object behavior or the object
So
diagram.
you'll have to explain. You'll have to explain epigenetics. Is
Yeah.
that
So,
the manifestation or the sort of the activation? What do they call it?
oh,
Activation?
so you're thinking like phenotype and genotype.
Okay, which I don't know. Which I know those words.
So the genotype is the DNA, and the phenotype is the actual application of it. Those are
Okay,
just genetic terms.
all right.
Sorry, I used to be a biochem student, so
You got me. You got me on every respect when it comes to the
yeah.
subject matter. So I liked this, by the way. It's so stupid. It's so dumb.
And it has hard luck Harold in as well.
That's the doctor. Is that guy's name?
I think so. I know the guy who looks in pain and
He
is
always looks
bald.
like he's in pain. Yeah, but I didn't until I saw this. I didn't realize that he actually made appearances in other memes. Because I only know him. I know him from. Well, I don't know. Maybe do I know him from more than one? I don't know. Um, anyway, we're so off topic, but it's so good. Sometimes you just sometimes. Hang on, I have to just throw this one out. Um, my challenge is that I have too many. It's like oh, here we go, here we go. There he is.
Nice.
I don't even know like where where this guy comes from, honestly. Hard Luck Harold, though, that's what they call him.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's like it's originally a picture of a guy sitting at a computer holding a cup of coffee and just looking miserable.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I've seen that one as well. Um I don't know, but I just did not understand. I didn't realize that this guy that in the memosphere that he had a name, which actually makes me extra happy. Now that I understand that, because that guy is living on in ways that some of the early memesters could only just, dream of. Um, yeah, anyway, I thought I even had another one with Hard Luck Harold. I don't think I
I'm
do.
probably familiar with it already, but if you want more information like that about just memes in general, there's a website called Know Your Meme, and it will tell you like the origins and sort of the etymology
Of the memes.
of the meme.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and in fact, I have been aware of that and haven't gone there in a long time, but I anciently recall it. So anyway, there's a little more Harold for your life. This one was sent to me by one of my daughters because the daughter with whom I swap memes every day. One day this drops on me and it just made me so stinking happy, you know. So it's just so, you know, how do you survive? Memes. Sometimes, honestly, it's all you got. Sometimes that's the anchor of the day that just kind of keeps you moving, gets you to the next day. Anyway, the number one thing that this is doing for you that object diagrams do, they're not fancy. They're just saying, here's the class diagram that tells you what one looks like. Here it is once it's running and you take a snapshot of the live system. That's it. Really, that's it. There are things you can see when you see that large system that cause you to think additional thoughts, right? In the same way that watching somebody use your system, live, as opposed to just a static view of a certain thing, you know? So, and there has not yet in the history of this class been a lecture on a topic that has blown by as fast as that one did, even with the rando comments. Okay, now this next one though is state diagrams, and I just have to say that I think that state diagrams are intensely important because I think state machines are intensely important in computer science, and from the perspective of hide the pain, Harold. Just saw it. Hide the pain. He does always look like he's choking back the pain, doesn't he? He always looks like he's just struggling. Oh man, thank you for that link, Rick. Really appreciate that. Okay. Oh man. Okay. Let's talk about state diagrams. And I want to say one other thing about, and this is, again, I'm saying this a bazillion times. You know this is true. When it comes to the diagrams, I just don't care that much about the details of the specific syntax of the specific diagrams, because for the most part in industry, my perception, nobody frickin' cares. Unless it is the religion of your company. And if it's the religion of your company, learn it. You know, that's okay. There are reasons why, and the number one reason, by the way, why if there's a religion in your company that says, this is how we do, this is the language we use, and you're like, but everything's better when you do it in Rust, you know, shut the hell up, go away. Like, okay, sorry, Rust aficionados. I'm not picking on you specifically. I'm just saying it's not, there are reasons why it makes sense for a company to have a standard language, right? And part of it has to do with that same thing we've been talking about. What's the use case? The use case is other people who are not Rust programmers might have to maintain your code. That's part of the use case. Sometimes you got to get outside yourself. Oh, you know that, .NET, what are you, idiots? Everybody knows, that we should be using whatever, C++ or vice versa. I don't really care. So if there's a religion in your company, camel case, are you nuts? It doesn't matter. Whatever the coding standard is, whatever the language is, whatever the environment is, whatever the thing is, figure that out and comply, because there's a reason why a certain kind of homogeneity of standard in an organization, it leads to, I'm not saying it's always even the right decision or that there aren't downsides. You understand, right? I'm not saying any of those things. I'm just saying your first move in a company that imposes that on you is just do it. And the reason why is because then everybody can look at everybody's code, right? And they don't have to mess around with your fonts are different, your margins are different, your indentation is different, you're not using the same language. Oh, I can write this in 3 lines in ML. Well, someone's got to maintain it. Similarly, if you're doing diagrams and the diagrams are really important, like you're doing government bids, bids on government projects, for example, you might need to have a very uniform standard thing. And your company might even have tools that will let you build, these UML diagrams, and they're going to look like everybody else's. There are a lot of reasons why you should do that, okay? That I think are proper reasons. Later on, when you're the director or the vice president or whatever, and you think it was done stupid, you've got opportunities to have influence to evolve it, change it, emerge, right? You should try to have influence, but you don't do it by being an antisocial butthead coming right out of the chute. Like, that's stupid. There are probably reasons. But diagrams is one of those things where if they really are standardizing on it, probably a reason and it might not be a good one. But again, the value to understanding the syntax, at least going through it, is because the syntax is vocabulary. Vocabulary per Sapir-Whorf aids your thinking. You know, even the mushy form of Sapir-Whorf suggests that the vocabulary, the language, influences our thinking very strongly. And if I know that there is this notion of a transition, states, initial pseudo-state, final state, if I know that these are things, then it causes me to think certain thoughts when I am doing something with a state machine. Okay. Let me see. Devin, just FYI, you got a hot mic. There's not much coming through other than just a little bit of occasional fuzz. But just FYI.
My bad, sorry.
And I didn't know if you were like hanging tight, ready to, jump in and make a comment without interrupting. But yeah, and here's the other thing I wanted to say about state machines. I do have a war story about state machines. When I was an undergrad, you do all that stuff. You do the theory, right? You have finite state automata, right? You do all that stuff. You do the context-free, context, grammar, crapola,
Vaguely remember.
Chomsky's hierarchy, the pumping
Yes.
lemma, the pumping lemma. Who can live without the pumping lemma? And anyway, and Turing machines, right? And the notion of, anyway, I did all that stuff. I did all that crap. I got my A, I got my A and got out, kind of thing. Like a good student that was intent upon grad school. But somehow it didn't penetrate to me. Even when I had popped out, and some of it was like, oh, it's okay, I could do it. You ever encounter some classes that are like puzzle-like, right? So you're like, I can solve this puzzle. This is cool. I like this. I can do this integral. And sometimes you like really don't care, like intently don't care. And then it's really hard to succeed when you don't care. And some of my classes, I think, in this domain were kind of like that. Then I get out to HP and I'm given an assignment to build a keyboard driver, like from scratch. I am brand spanking new out of college. And this is HP, and I'm in the personal computer group, and I'm going to build a device driver to drive the keyboard, to work the keyboard for this HP Vectra Classic, and the operating system is OS2. And so, right? So design, and all I've ever done is little startup stuff, I built code. I did my school stuff. I did some code professionally, but nothing at this level. The language in question is x86 assembly language. Anyway, I start just noodling on it, like, well, how's this going to work? Well, they press a key. So this, what happens when they press a key? I just start teasing together all the things I know about what this thing's going to do, but I've never done this before, right? And then it dawns on me that the behavior of this thing is, in fact, a state machine. Okay. Thank you, Braden, for, Rock the Boat. That's a classic tune, man. That is, however, it'll get in your ear and stay there. That's the only danger with that song. It's already started in my head, but it's from my childhood or something. Okay, but I realize as I'm looking at what the behavior of the keyboard actually is, that it would really, really work well to design the entire thing as a state machine. That the whole thing really lent itself, and this was to being modeled as a state machine. And this was before I did a lot of stuff in grad school with sort of modeling, software modeling, which relates to design, and including object-oriented modeling that predates UML, right? All that other stuff. When I've talked about these other, the Booch method and Rumbaugh, OMT was what it was called, and Schleiermacher. When I'm somewhere early, I was rattling off about all that, right? As precursors to UML. Well, how do I know this? Okay, because I have all those books in the library down the hall, okay? I studied all of that stuff back before UML was even a thing. And so it was all about design and modeling in an object-oriented space. So this is before all of that. Anyway, I just realized that a keyboard worked really, really well to model as a state machine. And it was the first time that it just dawned on me that this made perfect sense. And I start drawing a little state machine. And next thing you know, I'm actually drawing a little state diagram to just get a kind of a clear idea in my head. The audience is me, and it didn't look anything like this, just circles and lines and, but all the triggers were key presses, right? All the triggers for transitions were key presses. Somebody presses, the H key. Well, it turns out that the key press down is one thing and the key press up is another thing. So there's this whole nested states and other kinds of stuff that happens when you write a keyboard driver. All I'm trying to say is I didn't know there was any value to any of this crap. And then suddenly I was building one. And that does happen a lot. And in my experience, so many software systems have either the entire system or a chunk of it that's modeled well as a state machine. I also, one time when I was at Novell, I picked up code that I was responsible for. It was backup and restore, okay? And I was working on the backup and restore for the OS2 client for NetWare, for Novell's product. So this is the client software on an OS2 machine that would allow the OS2 machine to back up its hard drive or file system to a Novell file server. This is, again, back before the web as we know it. I inherited code. Now, this code was, the whole interaction between the two ends was built as a state machine. And it included, are you ready for this? The language is C, okay? The language was C. It included a 1,000 line switch statement. Let that sink in, my young friends, my young Padawan learners. Let that sink in. 1,000 line switch statement. Who's responsible for that one? Now, you know what would have been really handy on that one is if they had sent along with it, if the code came with a state diagram that would actually document the interactions with the other side. You couldn't tell by looking at the code. You'd like tease all that apart. Does that make sense? And then later on, when I got into data communications and protocols, like wireless data communication protocols, in, for example, the Infrared Data Association, you start to realize that all of those interactions involve state machines, right? I fire up my, let's just go back to Palm Pilots. We'll stay in infrared for a second, but true of Bluetooth, true of Wi-Fi, but some of the dynamics, infrared, very, very simple. I'd grab my Palm Pilot and I would push the button, right? And that would cause infrared bits to start spraying out of the end. And I'm in the state of ignorance, like I don't know who's out there. And so I initiate this process of discovery. Discovery just does this certain thing, and then just like waits, spills some bits, waits, spits bits, waits. Suddenly, while I'm waiting, bits come back at me. Oh, I'm in a state of having discovered now. Now my behavior now changes, right? You see it? When I'm in that initial state, my behavior is to initiate discovery. When somebody responds, I'm now in the state of having a list of discovered devices. With infrared, typically only one. With Bluetooth, as you know, it can be many, many more. Or Wi-Fi, where you see a bunch of access points, right? Okay, now what's my next state? Maybe I give the user a chance to select one. Or if there's only one and it was infrared, it would just go to the next state, which was try to connect with that one. Okay, well, connection involves other states like a negotiation stage to understand what its parameters are. Some kind of an exchange of information. But the point just being, I'm moving through states. And because the behavior in each state is different, And the states are a perfect way to embody that movement. And when you look in, if you're interested in protocols and data communications, look in the specs for IP, TCP/IP, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, infrared. I don't care what it is. You look in any of these specifications for data communications, state machines everywhere. Okay, all over heck, there are state machines. So I'm just saying, this is of all of the, I mentioned use cases, right? We beat the crap out of use cases. And of all of the other UML diagrams, the possible exception of class diagrams, because that really is a direct connection to the code you're about to write, just to define an object. State diagrams, for my money, your mileage may vary, but for my money, state diagrams are the critical, in the guts kind of specification in UML or any system for that matter. And we first start, I talk about state diagrams in 2810, that far back in the curriculum. The ideas should be, they're pretty second nature to you right now, wouldn't you say? Given other classes you've had? Is that true? Have you had that automata stuff? Automata stuff?
I don't know if it's required for this class, but they cover it pretty extensively in the second discrete math class.
Okay.
And
yeah.
they cover state diagrams and stuff too. I wish they did a better job of like converting it, showing how it converts to code instead of just, being a mathematical theory thing. But yeah, we cover them for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and that's an interesting question too, right? How much do you drill down? I'm actually just looking out of curiosity again for when I go to 3450, I've got that curriculum thing we were looking at. 3450 prereqs. Great, more numbers. 3250 or 3260. Nope, that's Java or C#. Or 3270 or 3370. What are they? 3370 is C++. 3270 Python software development. Okay. Yeah, so no, it's mostly just trying to get you in here with a wee bit of maturity, and not that you've had, that discrete. So discrete 1 is 2300. Discrete 2 is 3240. Yeah. All right. But anyway, if you haven't had that already, I think part of the reason I'm pitching that is to give you a reason to care, right? Yeah, really theory heavy. One other thing, by the way, when I had a theory class in my PhD program where it was automata theory, like graduate level, whatever. But one of the things we did, maybe it was more like complexity. I can't think it was the same class. But we actually built a Turing machine, wrote the code for a Turing machine. And it's pretty simple, right? You basically just read, if you haven't had it yet, you don't know what in the crap I'm talking about. But the Turing machine was this abstraction of a computer, right, created by Alan Turing. And you basically just take a character from a theoretically infinite tape, and a character comes in. Based upon the character, the entire thing is basically just a state machine. So the state machine is the program. So you would first kind of load a program that would say, okay, if you're in this state and you get that character, you move to that other state. If you get this if you're in this state and you get that character, then you move to the other state, or you do the following things and you move to the next state. So we built this Turing machine that was the abstract function that did all this stuff. Then we would write programs basically by just defining the state machine, and we'd load that into the machine. Then here would come the program that ran against that it was the actual tape would be like an input file or just an input stream. And then that was, so you had your machine, you'd load the state machine, basically. The state table would get loaded. Then here would come the little tape, which was sort of like the actual program, which would then be interpreted by the machine looking at the state table. Flip, 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 do, da, 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 and it would do whatever it was going to do. And then we had to like solve certain problems by writing the solutions to the problems in the form of a Turing tape. Running against a state machine that we had defined, which we had then loaded into our Turing machine. And the truth is, and this is maybe, back to, I think, Sam, you were kind of pitching the concreteness. I'm an abstract guy, but that was a kick butt project. That was like, it was really fun. And I felt like it totally anchored the concepts and principles of state machines, the Turing machines, that theoretical construct. I felt like it got really, really, really real when we did that, So, great, Magic the Gathering, nice. Braden, sorry to have created all that distraction in your life. Let me hit a couple other things here, okay? All that really is happening in a state machine. I'm going to walk through these. This is just a trigger signature, right? Candle removed. The candle was removed. Again, this state machine is pretty slim. It's trying to be a scenario, right? You start in the wait state. I think you're trying to like make your way through some secret door. So if there's a door closed, that's the state you're in. And the candle is removed, it reveals the lock. Here comes the lock. If you turn the key and the candle's in, then it opens the safe. If you turn the key and the candle's out, it releases a killer rabbit. All right, so I think the idea here is it's like you remove the candle, that reveals the lock. Then you have to put the candle back and then turn the key, and now it opens the safe. But if you leave the candle open and turn the key, it releases a killer rabbit. Terrifying. That's it. That's it. The guard is like a condition that has to also hold. I think the guard is conceptually a little bit like a state, And then this is what happens. There's the activity. Let me see, what else to say? You can identify internal activities in this thing. Again, these are examples, but like see where you're in a state like wait, open, lock. Well, you could be the state of typing. And then there's internal things that are happening in that state. That's all this is trying to be. Okay. And you can have activity states like update the hardware window, search. I don't like searching. I like the verb tenses to be the same. You know what I mean? I would say update, display, search. That according to Chuck. So that sort of, identifies an activity when you're in those states. There is this notion of a superstate where I can like enter connection details, and in the very same state diagram, I can show like double click on that, and it's actually itself also a state machine. That can work. This to me gets really cluttery, For me personally, and again, it doesn't make me right. For me personally, I like the idea of just say show connections, and then if it's new, you go enter connection details. Then there's another graph for enter connection details. The whole thing is just called like enter connection details, and it's a little state machine. I feel like that's cleaner than trying to nest them and embed them. One man's opinion. Concurrent states, I think, wind up turning into a little bit of confusion, in my humble opinion. You know, it's, and again, if you get really good at it, maybe this is what you use all the time, so it's not so hard. It basically is just going to allow that in the on state, there's this concurrency boundary with the dashed lines across the center. And that concurrency boundary, hang on a second. That concurrency boundary says up here on top, we're displaying the current time. And then, you know, if an alarm happens, we just, you know, if we're in alarm mode, we display the alarm time. Also, we can be playing the radio, playing the CD, right? The idea that we're in this state of the system is on, and when it's on, a number of different things happen. That's all that's trying to show, okay? And this is the Goff state pattern, which, and I don't even remember what the order is. You've done this by now, right? Have to have. No, Goff pattern, the Goff state pattern. Let me see. I'm going to look it up. Glasses, please. No, it's number 10. Have you? I don't know if you've gotten to it. I'm not sure if you've gotten to number 10, the state of things. If you have, it's just barely, and it's like right about now. Okay. Alrighty. Now, okay, ready? Are you ready for this? Yeah, it's a freaking world record, okay? It's a world record. But it's all good. Now, we've only got a couple minutes. I want to just give you a quest, and I'll formalize it next time. Okay, we'll talk a little more about it. I want you to, between now and, what day is it? Today's Wednesday, so it'd be next Tuesday. I'm so dumb. Hang on. Somebody rewind that for me. Next Monday. Sometime between now and next Monday, on the weekend maybe, look around your world. It can be outside, out in the world. It can be a gas pump. It can be a restaurant. It can be anything in the real world, but it has to be a real world item. And ideally, it's a real world item controlled by software, but it is not a software product. Does that make sense? So, for example, gas pump, you can see how the gas pump is driven by a state machine, right? Can you see it? By the way, one of the fun things to do is go to a gas station, see all the things you can do. There's a bunch of interface buttons, right? Things you can do. Go to a gas station, and just push buttons out of order. If it's done right. If you do this wrong, it's going to charge you like $1,000 on your credit card. No, I don't know what will happen. I do know I've done it, and nothing bad happens. It shouldn't, you know, but like when it says do the one thing, push everything, you know. Now it might at some point detect some kind of weird tampering and go to another state, which is the contact, you know,
The local authorities.
contact the local authorities, contact the attendant, or, you know, talk to cashier or whatever.
Did you ever hear the rumor that if you put in your PIN backwards at an ATM, it'll alert the authorities?
I'm sure.
It
Okay,
turns out
I'm gonna
it's not
bet.
true.
I'm gonna bet $20 that that's bullcrap.
It is. But people thought it was
Oh,
true.
you're saying you're agreeing with me, but you're saying did I ever hear about it?
It was an urban legend. People said that if you put it in backwards, if you're like under duress and someone's like forcing you to withdraw money,
Yeah,
it'll call the police. It doesn't, but
yeah. Well, I wouldn't imagine.
it could theoretically.
Yeah, that's one of those dumb things because it's like, just remember, If someone sticks a gun in your face, you should probably put your ATM card in a, and then remember to punch in your pin backwards. Also, what if your pin is like 0550? See, that's the existence proof right
Well,
there.
all that is prevent you from using the same number, which I think they actually do.
Wait, say it again.
I think they actually prevent you from using the same number.
What do you mean by the same number?
Most pins will say you can't use like two of the same number. Some will say you can't use like ascending number.
Terrible from a security perspective. That cuts down on the combinations by so much.
It does, but there's a reason for it.
No doubt. Anyway, yeah, but the palindrome takes out that whole idea of go backwards but palindrome also requires you to repeat. So I don't know. But anyway, ideally it's outside of our world. And I like ATMs. I like gas pumps. I like self-serve anything. Vending machines. Now, when we had the first time I taught this class, we were in the CS building, right? And when it was time to do this exercise, we showed up in class, and I literally just sent everybody, the entire class, it was much bigger than we are, out into the CS building to all of the vending machines in groups of like 2 or 3 to document the state machines. So what you're going to do is document the state machine of an object. So you got to have enough opportunity to stay with it. Maybe video yourself doing it so you can go back and look back through it. And I'm okay if we get a couple good videos and you share those. I don't have a problem with that. Okay, but that's your quest between now and Monday is find vending machine, anything self-serve, ATM, gas pump, okay? But you have to be able to like control it, interface the parking system at UVU. Okay, parking anywhere actually that involves that you can see as a state machine, and they're pretty much going to all be state machines. Okay, we're out of time. So all right, we're cooking with gas. Good luck, stay safe. Wish me luck on my second shot. I expect to be sick Friday. What are you gonna do?
Are you getting the shot on Friday?
I'm getting the shot tomorrow. Tomorrow afternoon.
You're getting shot on Friday?
I'm getting shot. I'm standing in front of a firing squad. Yeah, I'm getting the second Moderna shot on Thursday. And I expect to have a really brutal shoulder night of, and I expect to be down with a fever the next day. That seems to be the pattern.
That's what I've heard as well. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you. And for you guys as well, if you're like rolling into that space, anytime soon, right? What's my alternative? Die on a ventilator. I'll go with a day sick. All right. On that cheerful note, everybody have a great weekend. I'm going to go die on a ventilator.
Take care.
All right. See ya.
See ya.